Neil deGrasse Tyson recently appeared on the Hasan Minhaj podcast, and they spoke a lot about AI, and I thought that Neil deGrasse Tyson's thoughts on it weren't particularly well thought out, and I thought I'd talk about them a bit today in this video.
AGI.
AI has been around long before ChatGPT. ChatGPT put it on the radar of creative people.
You talked about this on Colbert. Let's take a look. Here's what
I did?
This is what you said.
What'd I
AI
say?
beat us at chess. AI beat us in Jeopardy. No one freaked out and ran for the hills when that happened. It only made headlines when AI figured out how to write your term paper. Then all the liberal arts people, they pooped their pants.
Thank you.
Okay?
The first set of things that Neil says is that when ChatGPT came along, people started to freak out a little bit. But we had already had AI beat us at chess in 1996, and we had had an AI beat a human at Jeopardy in some year. I have no idea when, but before ChatGPT came out. But all of a sudden, when ChatGPT came out, everyone started to freak out. It's like, yes, it is true that we've had like other forms of AI before and people didn't freak out in the same way. That's because they were very narrow models capable of one narrow task. When you have general models that are capable of many tasks, that obviously encourages people to think about what's coming down the line in a few years. It's completely normal for people to think like that. It's important to clarify that there is a key difference in how Deep Blue was trained compared to how GPT-3 and GPT-2 were trained, right? So with the IBM Watson model, which I had to Google to figure out what kind of architecture it used, they used to train the model, because I wasn't really aware myself. IBM Watson was able to search a database to find information. That's a huge difference to how large language models are trained today, where the knowledge is held in the parameters of the neural network, right? Very similar to how the information that's stored within my brain, however much is left of it after frying it all with social media, is held in the connections between the neurons, right? And that's very similar to how the information is stored in modern day large language models. We only had the computing power necessary to train modern day large language models this decade. But before that, you just weren't able to use that architecture to train models because we just simply did not have the computing power required. So that they had to use other means to make a model like IBM Watson. The models of 2023 are laughably bad compared to the models that we have today. But the fact that they were able to have a reasonable level of performance in writing, in maths, in reasoning, and at the same time, we also had very good image models begin to become publicly available. So like, I think that the public worry was like pretty proportional to the capabilities that we saw emerge in 2022, 2023. Neil then says that he, in an attempt to kind of psychoanalyze the people who were worrying about this, it was because all of a sudden the liberal arts people, they had AI models that were able to do the tasks that they do on a daily basis for their job. Maybe this is true. I think it's just because the huge range of tasks that these models were capable of was just obviously so impressive and was obviously going to be very impactful on society, right?
Now, why are you not as worried about AGI's impact on humanity, and what would make you poop your pants?
Okay, so AGI, it can learn anything
Yes.
at all on its own and be self-motivated doing so. Because ChatGPT is not going to make your cup of coffee.
Yeah.
AGI would look at your life and say, oh, he probably wants this tomorrow. Let me figure out how much and why, and they'll do it.
Neil then gives a rough explanation of AGI that's okay. ChatGPT is not able to make coffee right now, but a truly general artificial intelligence would be able to do that. And then he says that the general model would be able to not only make you that cup of coffee, but would be able to figure out anything that you would want and would be able to figure out how to get it to you. But then, and here's the key point, Neil says, and the exact quote is, and they'll do it. Now, this may sound like nitpicking because, maybe Neil is just talking hypothetically here. The problem is, yes, we know how to make AI very capable. And if AI continues to improve at the rate it has been improving over the last several years, then we will very shortly have AI that is capable of figuring out what a human wants and getting it to them. But we don't know how to make them want to do what the human wants. We are reasonably good at understanding what ants want, but we don't want, generally speaking, to do what they want, right? We are capable of creating nice environments for ants to live in, but generally speaking, we don't really care about their well-being, so we just kill them and build houses on top of their nests. So this is the key. This is the alignment problem in a nutshell. We know how to make AI capable, but we don't know how to make it care about us and do things that we would want it to do. And this, in general, is something I don't think Neil understands. Maybe he understands it in a hypothetical sense, but doesn't understand how modern day models are already showing very serious signs of misalignment, and we don't have any good plan to eradicate that misalignment, and we don't understand how to get models that want to help humanity when they get smarter than we are. And that's the key problem.
So some people find that concerning. You don't find it concerning.
I don't think it's in the offing. I don't see why we would value it. It sounds highly useful.
Right.
Okay. However, we're humans and we're in charge. Or at least we still tell ourselves that.
Okay.
So I have tasks in my life. I would love to have computers do it for me. I don't want the computer to do everything. I want it to do that thing.
Yeah, like I agree to an extent with Neil here. Like, yeah, there are some things, at least in theory, that I wouldn't want computers to do for me. Like, you know, I enjoy spending time with other humans. In my ideal world, would not be replaced by computers. But we also have to be honest with ourselves and say that a huge number of hours in 2025 are being spent by people on their phones, not socializing with real humans, right? And this is something that maybe people 20 years ago would have said, what do you mean I'm going to spend 6 hours a day staring at a box of lights and not going out and playing football and going to the pub and socializing and going to watch a film and blah, blah, blah. What do you mean I'm going to be doing that? But that has materialized, right? So even though in theory, we like to say that we want to be with humans and we wouldn't want like technology taking over our lives, in practice, this is what has happened to a large extent. And social media is a great example of algorithms being employed throughout society, but not being aligned with true human interest, right? This is a huge problem. So I think we have to be honest with ourselves, and sometimes technology is integrated into society in a way that does not benefit us. And I think that is pretty clearly the case with social media. The main point is that, yeah, Neil, there may be some tasks that we don't want the machine, the AGI to do, but we don't know how to make sure that it doesn't do that thing. Because again, once we have models that are more intelligent than we are, it will do what it wants to do and we will not be able to stop it. Now, if we are able to solve alignment before and make sure what it wants to do be the things that increase human well-being, then problem solved. But we don't know how to solve that first step, and that's the key problem.
So why are the leading science and tech thought leaders talking about this in a very terrifying way?
So let me clarify that for you.
Sure.
Some leading tech people talk about it in that way.
Okay.
And they're the ones that get all the clickbait. What you don't see are the far the number of tech people who do not feel that way.
Let's think about the leading tech people. Let's have a look at them and let's see what they think, right? So maybe we could have a look at the list of the most cited researchers in the field of artificial intelligence and have a look what they think. The most cited AI researcher of all time, Yoshua Bengio, one of the godfathers of AI, he thinks there's a 20% chance that AI causes human extinction. That's what the most cited AI researcher thinks. So, you know, maybe the second most cited AI researcher disagrees with him and thinks it's all bullshit. Let's have a look who the second most cited AI researcher is. So Jeffrey Hinton, who is also known as one of the godfathers of AI and has won a Nobel Prize. His personal assessment of the chance of human extinction from misaligned AI is over 50%, right? So he's very, very worried about this. But maybe the top two, they're unique in their worries, and you know, maybe the third most cited AI researcher will come along and say this is all bullshit, there's nothing to worry about. The third most cited AI researcher of all time is Ilya Sutskever, who used to work at OpenAI. He is deeply concerned about the threats posed by artificial general intelligence, and he even proposed building a bunker for the staff at OpenAI before he left, due to concerns that OpenAI weren't going to be able to develop AGI safely, even though we're racing towards it. One more point on these three most cited AI researchers. Yes, Ilya Sutskever now works for Safe Superintelligence Incorporated, which is a for-profit company trying to build super intelligent AI. But Yoshua Bengio and Jeffrey Hinton, neither of them work for any company that is building and deploying AI models right now, so they are not financially invested in spreading hype about the technology. Yoshua Bengio is an independent researcher, and Jeffrey Hinton, he left his previous job at Google, and is now just going around the world warning people about the threat of superintelligence. But perhaps this is a field where the top dogs have these crazy ideas, and most people are sensible. They know that the top dogs are just, you know, all the fame has got to their head, and they say silly things. So what is, like, maybe there's been some polling that asks what the average AI researcher thinks about this. turns out that the average researcher thinks there's a 14.4% chance that AI kills us all in the next 100 years. So, yeah, I think Neil is pretty conclusively wrong that the people who are worried about this are somehow a minority, or at least that they aren't the majority. I think he's pretty clearly wrong about that. But like, I will give him some credit here. Like, our media environment, the way the news works is broken, and it does not accurately reflect reality. And there's a lot of clickbait and attempts to get people to be angry and to be fearful, right? And it's just not an accurate reflection of reality. And maybe Neil has some heuristic that if the media is talking about something being big and dangerous, it probably isn't. This may actually work most of the time, but like, I think you with an issue this important, like, you need to go beyond those heuristics and actually look at it for yourself. Very recently, we had COVID-19. Many people, when the news stories started to come in, said, this is just, loads of fear mongering. This is hype from the media. And, that heuristic normally works. It normally is hype. It normally is fear mongering. But it turns out with COVID that, we did have a global pandemic. And most of the world was locked in their homes. They could only leave once a day. And hundreds of thousands, millions of people died. I can put the exact death figure on the screen now. These heuristics are sometimes useful, but I think enough serious people are very worried about this, that those heuristics, if that is why Neil is thinking this way, should be left behind, and he should be actually offering good arguments as to why we shouldn't worry about this.
Well, one of the things that people talk about, and I was talking about with our producers, is human beings have this blind spot. And the specific blind spot is our inability to see things exponentially.
That's correct.
And one of the things, I
wrote a whole chapter on that in one of my books.
That was I just included that clip because I thought it was a funny attempt at self-promotion. But anyway, we'll get back to the point.
These exponential step functions that you've seen even in my 39 years on planet Earth, you're not concerned about them vis-a-vis AGI.
It'll happen with AGI.
And you're saying it's okay. It's going to be okay.
No, I'm saying I don't think AGI is what we're going to go for.
Got it.
I think you want to do things that are useful and practical. And
so, Hasan then mentions that humans are bad at understanding the true knock-on effects of exponentials. I think this is obviously true. They both agree that exponentials are underrated by most humans, and it's difficult for the human brain to truly grasp them. But then when it comes to AGI, like, Neil just puts these kind of blinders on and can't truly grasp it. He says we won't go for AGI. I think these thoughts here are explained a bit better by a clip that's coming in a bit.
I'm going to ask you this. I come at science from a very humanistic perspective, and what scares me, and walk me through this. Scientific progress doesn't always equal human progress. I'll give you a prime example. Nuclear weapons was a prime example of that. Huge scientific breakthrough, not necessarily good for humanity.
Wait, just clarify.
Yes.
You can credit science for nuclear power.
Yes.
They became weapons because countries can't get along. Now, yes, countries paid scientists to build the bombs.
Yes.
But the scientific discovery equals MC squared from 1905 was a brilliant scientific discovery that gave us an understanding of the universe. Right. So you should put a line in the sand between.
What if the line is what the intention was, and then the net?
Okay, fine. It's how the sword gets used.
So the host Hasan then makes the excellent point that scientific progress does not equate to human progress. This is, of course, true. There are many times in human history where we have realized this in terms of global agreements that we've had to limit or ban certain technologies. So CFCs were destroying our ozone layer, even though it was a pretty useful molecule that was invented by humanity. We decided to phase out the use of it because of the harm it caused us. And there are many other examples. There biological weapons, chemical weapons, human cloning has. There's no official global treaty on this, but it's effectively been banned. And Hasan brings up the example of nuclear war. Neil seems like reluctant to blame science for the invention of nuclear weapons, and says they only became weapons because countries can't get along. I don't really understand this point. Like, yes, true to a certain extent, but nuclear weapons were still invented because scientists figured out how to invent them and invented them. They got their funded from governments, but I'm not really sure what Neil's getting at with that. And in terms of this being an analogy for AI, like to a certain extent, it is true that nuclear weapons only existed because the US government was afraid that the Nazis had nuclear weapons or were very close to developing them, and so put a lot of effort into developing them. And this was mentioned in a brilliant article in The Guardian recently by Garrison Lovely, which I'll put in the comments below. And we may see similar levels of investment from countries in trying to militarize AI. Up till now, the investment from governments themselves is significantly smaller than private investment. The fact that private investment is the main driver of the race to AGI compared to the situation with nuclear weapons shows that there's so much less oversight. There's so much less safety involved because it's being driven by for-profit companies and by private investors. That is a huge disanalogy between nuclear weapons and AI, which makes this arguably far scarier.
The risk factors would be higher. I don't have problems putting guardrails on things and checkpoints. I had a brief conversation with Ray Bradbury. He told me of a time when a woman came up to him and said, he's a science fiction author.
Yeah, of course.
And she asked, why do you write these stories of such apocalyptic futures?
Yeah.
Is this where you think civilization is headed? And he replied, no. I write those stories so you know to avoid them. So we see Terminator wreaking havoc, in the cities from the film, and maybe that'll tell us, maybe let's not put it in a machine.
I hope so, but
Neil mentions that he doesn't have problems with putting guardrails on things and checkpoints, which great. I'm great that he's at least doesn't have a problem with regulation. It's a weird way of phrasing it. Like, I think we should actively desire regulation to make sure this technology is developed responsibly, but at least he doesn't have a problem with it. And then he brings up this sci-fi author who said that he writes science fiction stories as a warning for humanity to make sure that we don't end up in those situations, right? And then he mentions Terminator as a warning for humanity about AI going badly. Now, for a multitude of reasons, Terminator is really bad science fiction in terms of accurately portraying an attempt from AI to take over. Humanoid robots are like the 7 millionth thing you'd attempt. There are so many easier ways to do it. Bioweapons, pathogens. Neil says that like maybe Terminator can give us the warning that we'll not put that in a machine. Well, hopefully it does give us that warning, and hopefully it does, and science fiction like it does provide enough of a warning so that we don't develop misaligned superintelligence. But right now, we are racing to that point, and we have no idea how to make sure that dangerous capabilities, that values that aren't aligned with our own, emerge in these models. We don't know how to do that, and that's why it's so dangerous. And just saying this kind of flippant attitude towards worries about AI from Neil deGrasse Tyson, I think shows he's not thought about it that deeply, and is actually one of the people that is often warned about in science fiction stories. I mean, the recent film Don't Look Up, where we have people who, till the very end, just seem to not get it and to just say, people are worrying about nothing, we'll figure it out. Well, we might not figure it out. And that's why we need to put in the work to either figure it out or not put ourselves in a situation where our inability to figure out those problems doesn't kill us all.
if you remember the Great Recession that we had, unemployment hit 10%. And it was extremely painful. What if that, because of AGI and the mass like wipeout of white collar jobs, what if that went to 15%? What if that went to 20%?
So to say AI is going to take our jobs, the white collar jobs, therefore no one will have any work left to do, be creative and find something that AI can't do and create a whole industry out of that.
Be creative and find something that AI cannot do and create a whole industry out of that. If this is your plan to transition from our current world to a post-AGI world, I really don't want you anywhere near the policy on this. This is not like a good, robust plan to manage our transition to a post-AGI world and all of the job loss that will come with that.
Oh, God, there's going to be more podcasting?
I'm just saying.
Neil, that's a net negative for society.
Haven't you heard AI do a podcast? You haven't heard it yet?
No.
Oh, my gosh. Producers, you got to get them.
And rather curiously, the host Hasan then mentions that one of the jobs that people may switch to is podcasting. And then Neil himself says, well, have you not heard the AI models that are able to make podcasts? And, I'll play a clip now for those of you who haven't heard it.
Today we're going to be looking at a document, and it's strange and kind of funny.
Yeah, what's so interesting about this document is that when you first look at it, it just seems like way too simple, almost meaningless,
Yeah.
But it's that simplicity that makes you want to look closer,
Exactly. It's like when you find a perfectly smooth stone.
There are still problems with the intonation. It's still slightly weird, but it's very good and is so much better than it was 2 years ago. And if you look 2 years into the future, it will be even better than it is now. So it's curious that the one example that comes up in this conversation of a job that someone may be able to do in a post-AGI world is immediately shut down by Neil. But those who say, oh, well, we'll just get different jobs once AI automates these jobs. Well, which jobs? Which jobs? Because there's going to be billions and billions of people who are without jobs, and just saying, oh, there'll be some jobs that come up, that's not good enough. We need better plans than that. Oh, it won't be AI that takes your job, it will be a human using AI. Yeah, imagine two horses talking in the year 1900 and someone saying, oh, I'm a bit worried about losing my job to this car that's coming along. I think it's going to be better than us. And the other horse says, oh, well, don't worry about that. It's not going to be a car that takes your job. It's going to be a horse using a car. Like, this is just bullshit. So yeah, we need a better plan than that if we're going to transition into post-AGI worlds. Our plan at Pause AI is that we shouldn't do that transition yet because we are not ready.
You are a science optimist and a techno optimist. Is that safe to say?
I would say I'm a optimist realist. Is there one word for that?
You have optimism and pragmatism.
Pragmatism, thank you. Yes. So I see the bright side of things, but with a reality check.
Exact same topic that we mentioned in the last video comes up again about optimism. Now, Neil says that he's an optimist realist, promoting optimism and pragmatism. So yeah, I respect Neil for mentioning that. We need a reality check, that optimism shouldn't blind our ability to see the world. Only through getting rid of our optimism and pessimism and focusing on what is true are we going to be able to solve these problems and have a world that we want to and are able to live in. So I think in general, Neil deGrasse Tyson and some similar science communicators, public figures, like right now, they're kind of able to say these poorly thought through things about AI and they get away with it to a certain extent. There's just not that many people there to ask them to explain what they mean, because I think even if the people espousing these ideas, if they just like try to lay them out in writing, they would quickly realize that they haven't really got a leg to stand on. On the very small chance that Neil is watching this video, I'd suggest he do this. He write out some written form of his argument here, because I think he himself would see that it does not rest on logic and evidence, but it rests on wishful thinking. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know any other videos you'd like me to make, if you think these kind of reaction videos are good, or if you'd like me to do something else, or if you'd like me to stop making YouTube videos. You're also welcome to leave that comment. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one.